Hi everyone, my name is Angeline Manamaw. I'm Forest BSF 1B. So for today's video, we're going to discuss about the sulfur cycle. So sulfur cycle is made of four steps: mineralization, oxidation, reduction, and incorporation. So, sulfur is one of the main constituents of many proteins, vitamins, and hormones. So, sulfur is often found in oxidation states that can be range the sulfate, the soil environment of sulfur can be produced in either organic or inorganic form. So, sulfur cycle contains the both atmospheric and terrestrial process in the inside of the terrestrial portion. The cycle begins with a weathering the rock, which means with is releasing the restored sulfur. It is imperative to learn about how exactly the sulfur undergoes mineralization in the sulfur cycle. So for this case, sulfur is mainly cycled throughout the environment and the sea, water, and marine environment. So oxidation is the process of losing an electron from the element or compound. In the sulfur cycle, there is a sulfate oxidation and sulfur oxidation. So each of these processes are performed by microbes in anaerobic environments. Anaerobic environments such as hot spring, sulfate such as hot spring. So sulfate reduction is a process of carried out by the anaerobic microbes which transform the sulfate or sulfate. So these microbes diverse the varied group or both genetically and physiologically and typically found in aquatic environment. So where the acts the decomposers, however, they are also present in great numbers within the sulfur source spring, such as those Yellowstone, where sulfate is abundant and continually replenished. So, incorporation involved the process changing the sulfate to an organic compound. This include metal containing derivatives. So the microbes diverse is varied the group both genetically and physiologically and typically found in aquatic environment where they act the decomposer. However, there are also present in great numbers within sulfur spring and such as those Yellowstone that were sulfate. This is chemical symmetry. So the sulfur cycle describes the movement of sulfur through atmosphere and mineral forms. Although the living things, the sulfur primarily is found in the sedimentary rocks, seawater. It is particularly important of living things and because it is component of many proteins. So sulfur is released the geologic source through withering of rocks. Once the sulfur exposed to the air, it combines the oxygens, becomes the sulfate or SO4, plants, microbes, and assimilate sulfate and convert into organic form. As animals consume plants, the sulfur is moved through food chain. So, at the release, the organic and die and decompose. Some bacteria, for example, Proteus or Campylobacter Pseudomonas and Salmonella have ability to reduce sulfur, but can also use oxygen and terminal electrons. S- So others such as Disulfiromas use only sulfur. These bacteria get the energy of reducing elemental sulfur to hydrogen sulfate. They combine this reaction with oxidation of acetate or constituent or other organic compounds. So the almost well-known sulfur-reducing bacteria are the domain Archaea, which are some of the oldest form of life on Earth. They're often to ex- so the sulfur metabolic pathways of bacteria have important and medical implication. For example, the Mycobacterium or tuberculosis, the bacteria causing tuberculosis, and the Mycobacterium leprae, which cause the leprosy. So both utilize sulfur. So the sulfur pathway is a target of drug development to control the bacteria. So for those who doesn't know what is the cycle, so it is the cycle in science. Cycle is a sequence changing states that upon the competition produce a final state of an identical original one.